Learn English through a deep story. Don't waste your life. Introduction. Sometimes life does not stop with a loud sound. It becomes quiet. Too quiet. Not because everything is peaceful, but because we slowly stop feeling awake. We get up. We check our phones. We answer messages. We go to work. We come home tired. We watch videos. We sleep. And then we do it all again. At first, it feels normal. Later, it feels heavy. Then one day, a question appears. A simple question. But a dangerous one. What am I doing with my life? Many people are afraid of failure. Many people are afraid of pain. Many people are afraid of change. But there is another fear. A deeper fear. The fear of wasting your life. The fear of reaching the end and understanding that you were alive, but not truly living. The fear of having dreams, but never touching them. The fear of always waiting. Waiting for more energy. Waiting for more money. Waiting for the right time. Waiting for tomorrow. This story is about that fear. But it is also about something else. It is about attention. It is about focus. It is about the small moments that quietly build a human life. And strangely, it is also about a card game. A simple game. A quiet table. A deck of cards. A game of solitaire. Some people think solitaire is only a way to pass time. A small habit. A private distraction. A quiet game for lonely evenings. But sometimes simple things show us deep truths. Sometimes a card game becomes a mirror. Sometimes it shows us how we think. How we wait. How we rush. How we avoid. How we hope. And how we begin again. This is not a story about becoming perfect. It is not a story about fast success. It is not a story about becoming rich, famous, or admired by everyone. It is a story about waking up. It is a story about choosing your life before your habits choose it for you. It is a story about one person who felt lost, tired, distracted, and empty. And about how that person slowly learned to look at time in a new way. Not through big speeches. Not through dramatic change. But through silence. Through repetition. Through reflection. Through one card at a time. If you have ever felt that your days are disappearing too fast, this story is for you. If you have ever promised yourself that tomorrow would be different, this story is for you. If you have ever looked at your life and felt that something important was missing, this story is for you. And if you simply want to improve your English while listening to a thoughtful and emotional story, this story is also for you. So sit down. Take a breath. Slow down for a moment. And listen. Because the most dangerous way to lose your life is not through one terrible mistake. It is through thousands of quiet moments that seem unimportant. Until one day, they become your whole life. Part 1. Life on Autopilot. Daniel was not unhappy in a dramatic way. Nothing was broken. No disaster had destroyed his life. He had a job. He paid rent. He had food in the kitchen. He had people he could call. From the outside, everything seemed fine. But inside, he often felt like a man walking through fog. He moved. He spoke. He answered emails. He smiled when needed. He made plans he did not care about. He said, "I'm just tired," when people asked if he was okay. Sometimes this was true. But not fully. The real problem was harder to explain. He felt absent from his own life. Every day started the same way. His alarm rang. He reached for his phone before his eyes were fully open. News. Messages. Short videos. More videos. More scrolling. Then panic. Then rushing. Then coffee. Then work. At work, he moved between tasks. But his mind was never fully there. He opened one window, then another. One message, then another. One small thing, then another small thing. The day filled with motion. But almost nothing felt meaningful. In the evening, he was too tired to begin anything important. So he did what many people do. He escaped. Sometimes with videos. Sometimes with random articles. Sometimes with games. Sometimes with nothing at all. Just sitting and feeling empty. He often told himself he needed rest. And yes, sometimes he really did. But sometimes what looked like rest was only avoidance. Rest gives energy. Avoidance steals it. He did not know when one became the other. Weeks passed. Then months. Daniel had old dreams. He wanted to write. He wanted to speak better English. He wanted to build something that belonged to him. He wanted a life with more intention. He wanted to wake up and feel direction. But his dreams lived in a strange place. Not in today. Not in action. They lived in the future. In the land of later. Later, when work is easier. Later, when I feel better. Later, when I have more discipline. Later, when I am ready. But later is a dangerous place. Many people build a home there. And then they never leave. One Friday evening, Daniel came home after a long week. He dropped his bag by the door. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. He did not turn on music. He did not turn on the TV. He just stood in the kitchen and looked at the wall. He felt a sudden wave of fear. Not fear of something outside. Fear of himself. Fear that he was disappearing into routine. Fear that his life was becoming a long line of repeated days. Fear that if nothing changed, 5 years would pass like one tired afternoon. He poured a glass of water. He sat down. And for the first time in a long while, he did not try to distract himself. He let the silence stay. It was uncomfortable. But honest. He looked around the room. A chair. A lamp. A shelf. A closed drawer in the corner table. He suddenly remembered something old. A deck of cards. His grandfather had given it to him many years earlier. Daniel opened the drawer. The cards were still there. A little worn. A little soft at the edges. He smiled without meaning to. As a child, he had watched his grandfather play solitaire during slow afternoons. Not with stress. Not with anger. But with patience. His grandfather used to say, "If you cannot control the whole day, control the next move." At the time, Daniel thought it was only about cards. Now it sounded different. He sat at the table. He shuffled the deck. The sound was dry and soft. He dealt the cards. One by one. The room felt calmer already. No notifications. No noise. No hurry. Only the table. Only the cards. Only this moment. He turned over the first cards and began to play. At first, it was just memory. A small return to childhood. A way to pass an hour. But as he played, something changed. His breathing slowed. His thoughts became clearer. He noticed how often he wanted quick results. He noticed how impatient he was when the right card did not appear. He noticed how easily he almost missed a useful move because he was thinking ahead instead of looking carefully. The game did not ask for speed. It asked for attention. And attention was something he had not truly practiced in a long time. When the game ended, he did not feel that he had won something big. But he also did not feel empty. That surprised him. He looked at the cards on the table. A simple game. A very small moment. And yet it felt more real than most of his week. He cleaned the table slowly. He put the cards away. Before going to sleep, he wrote one sentence in a notebook. I do not need a new life tomorrow. I need to return to this life today. It was a small sentence. But it was the first honest sentence he had written in months. Part 2. Time is a currency. The next day Daniel woke up and reached for his phone. Then he stopped. His hand remained in the air for a moment. He looked at the screen. Then he placed the phone back on the table. It was not a dramatic victory. He was not suddenly a different person. But something had shifted. He had seen himself more clearly the night before. And once you see something clearly, it becomes harder to ignore. He made coffee. He sat near the window. No music. No scrolling. Just light, steam, and the quiet sound of a city waking up. He began to think about time. Not in the usual way. Not as hours on a clock. Not as appointments. Not as the difference between Monday and Friday. He thought about time as a currency. A currency more serious than money. Money can be lost and earned again. Time cannot. Once spent, it disappears forever. And yet people protect money more carefully than time. People compare prices. They search for discounts. They worry about waste. But then they give whole evenings to habits that make them feel empty. They spend years waiting for motivation. They lose attention in tiny pieces until their lives feel broken into fragments. Daniel thought about his own days. How many hours had he traded for distraction? How many mornings had disappeared before they even began? How many evenings had he called rest when he was really hiding from effort, fear, or discomfort? He did not want to become cruel to himself. Guilt can sound wise, but often it only makes people weak. What he wanted was not guilt. He wanted clarity. Clarity says, "This is the truth." And then it asks, "What will you do next?" That afternoon, he visited his mother. She was cleaning old boxes in the hallway. She asked him to help. Inside one box, Daniel found photographs. Birthdays. School trips. Summer evenings. His parents when they were younger than he was now. He looked at their faces. They seemed so alive. So busy with becoming. So close to the beginning. His mother smiled and said, "Time is strange. When you are young, life looks endless. Then one day, you realize it has already become a story." Her words stayed with him. A story. That is what a life becomes. Not a list of intentions. Not a collection of plans. A story made of actual days. Actual choices. Actual use of attention. That evening he played solitaire again. This time he watched himself carefully. He noticed the tension in his body when the game became difficult. He noticed his impulse to rush. To force. To become annoyed. To demand progress immediately. But the game did not care about his mood. The cards were the cards. The order was the order. The next move had to come from what was real, not from what he wished were real. This touched something deep inside him. Much of his suffering came from fighting reality. He wanted results without process. Confidence without practice. Change without discomfort. A meaningful life without meaningful daily choices. But life is not built that way. A good life is not one giant decision. It is many small decisions repeated long enough to become a direction. One page read. One honest conversation. One less hour of mindless scrolling. One walk without noise. One evening spent learning instead of escaping. One card placed carefully. He thought again of his grandfather. The old man had lived simply. He never became rich. He never became famous. But when he spoke, people listened. Why? Because he was present. Because he gave full attention. Because when he sat with you, he was really there. That is rare. And rare things are powerful. Daniel understood something else that night. Waste does not always look like destruction. Sometimes it looks comfortable. Sometimes it feels normal. Sometimes it arrives wearing the soft clothes of habit. You do not notice it because it does not attack you. It simply invites you to sleep a little longer inside your own life. And if you accept that invitation every day, years disappear. When the game ended, he lost. But he did not feel frustrated. In fact, he felt grateful. The game had shown him something honest. Not every day is a victory. Not every effort ends with success. But losing with attention is better than winning in distraction. He wrote again in his notebook. Time is not what I have. Time is what I am spending. And then another sentence. If I respect my hours, I respect my life. Part 3. The Trap of Tomorrow. On Monday, Daniel returned to work. Nothing magical happened. The office was still noisy. Emails still arrived. Tasks still waited. His energy still moved up and down. This disappointed him for a moment. Part of him wanted instant transformation. Part of him wanted one emotional weekend to solve everything. But deep change rarely begins with fireworks. It begins quietly. It begins when a person stops expecting to feel ready all the time. During lunch, his coworker Nina sat beside him. She looked tired. She laughed and said, "I have so many things I want to do, but I keep saying I'll start next week." Daniel smiled. The sentence sounded painfully familiar. He asked, "Do you believe next week will feel different?" She paused. Then she laughed again. "No," she said. "But it sounds better than today." That sentence stayed with him. Tomorrow often sounds better than today. It feels cleaner, safer, more organized. Tomorrow has no mistakes yet. Tomorrow has no discomfort yet. Tomorrow has no effort yet. That is why people love it. Tomorrow is a beautiful liar. It promises movement without requiring action now. It protects us from the pain of beginning. Because beginning is hard. Beginning means being imperfect. Beginning means seeing your weakness. Beginning means accepting that progress will be slower than fantasy. Beginning means risking failure in the real world instead of winning in your imagination. So people delay. They call the delay planning. They call it waiting for the right mood. They call it needing more information. Sometimes those things are true. But often they are only fear with polite language. That evening Daniel came home and felt the old pull. The phone. The sofa. The wish to disappear for a few hours. He almost gave in without thought. Then he remembered something simple. The goal is not to feel different first. The goal is to act differently, and let feeling follow. So he made a small rule. Before any screen, one meaningful action. Not a giant task. Not a perfect routine. Just one meaningful action. He opened his notebook. He wrote for 10 minutes. Then he studied English for 15 minutes. Then he played one game of solitaire. Only after that did he allow himself entertainment. The result was surprising. Because he had already done something real, the rest of the evening felt lighter. He was not escaping from emptiness. He was resting after intention. This difference mattered. The same activity can heal or harm depending on what role it plays in your life. A video can be rest. Or it can be avoidance. A game can be reflection. Or it can be numb repetition. Silence can be peace. Or it can be fear. The outside action is not the full truth. The inner purpose changes everything. Over the next week, Daniel watched the word tomorrow inside his own mind. He noticed it everywhere. I'll clean tomorrow. I'll start learning seriously tomorrow. I'll send that message tomorrow. I'll think about my future tomorrow. Tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. He realized that tomorrow had become a storage room for his values. Everything important was put there. And because tomorrow never truly arrived, those values stayed locked away. One night he dealt the solitaire cards and stopped before the first move. He looked at the table and imagined life the same way. If you never touch the first card, nothing changes. You can think about the perfect game. You can imagine the final result. You can hope for order. But until you move one card, the table remains the same. The first move is small. Sometimes almost laughably small. But it is holy in its own way. Because it breaks the power of delay. He began to ask himself a new question. Not, how do I fix my whole life? But, what is the next honest move? This question changed something important. It brought him back from fantasy to reality. Reality is where life happens. Fantasy is where life is postponed. The next honest move was sometimes tiny. Wash the cup. Read one page. Turn off the phone. Go outside for 10 minutes. Write one paragraph. Say sorry. Say no. Sleep on time. Deal the cards. Tiny moves. But repeated with respect. Repeated with presence. Repeated long enough to become character. At the end of that week, Daniel noticed something almost invisible. He trusted himself a little more. Not because he had achieved something huge, but because he had begun to stop abandoning himself every evening. That is what discipline really is for many people. Not punishment. Not hardness. It is self-respect in action. It is saying, I will not keep leaving my own life for later. He wrote again in his notebook. Tomorrow is useful for planning, but dangerous for living. Life must be touched today. Part 4. Small steps, real change. Many people want a big moment. A turning point. A dramatic scene. A powerful morning when everything becomes clear and easy. Stories often teach us to expect this. One decision. One speech. One perfect day. And then a new life begins. Real life is less dramatic. But it is also more honest. A new life usually begins in small ways. So small that the ego does not respect them at first. Daniel learned this slowly. He stopped trying to become a different man in 1 week. Instead, he built a few quiet rules. Phone after water. Screen after one meaningful action. 1 page before sleep. 1 game of solitaire without noise. Notebook every night. That was all. It did not look impressive. It would not inspire strangers on the internet. It was not beautiful. It was not dramatic. But it was real. And reality has more power than performance. At first, the rules felt fragile. Some days he followed them. Some days he did not. When he failed, the old voice returned. See? You never change. You always fall back. Why even try? But this time he answered differently. Falling back is not the end. Refusing to return is the end. So he returned. Again and again. This became one of the most important lessons of his life. Consistency is not perfection. Consistency is return. It is the decision to come back after distraction. Come back after laziness. Come back after weakness. Come back after shame. Come back after one bad day. Or 3 bad days. Or 10. The people who build strong lives are not always the people who never break. Often they are the people who return faster. One evening Daniel played solitaire after a stressful day. He made several mistakes. He placed cards too quickly. He missed a better move. He felt frustration rising. Then he stopped and laughed softly. This was exactly how he often lived. Too fast. Not looking carefully. Creating problems through impatience. The game became a teacher again. Slow is not weak. Careful is not boring. Attention is not wasted time. In fact, attention saves time that chaos destroys. This idea began to enter other areas of his life. At work, he tried single-tasking for short periods. Just 20 minutes. One task. One focus. No switching. No checking. No fake urgency. He discovered something strange. The work became easier. Not because the task changed, but because his mind was no longer being torn into pieces. At home, he cleaned one small area instead of imagining the whole apartment. He answered one important message instead of feeling guilty about 10. He practiced English in short blocks instead of waiting for a perfect long session. This taught him another truth. A mountain becomes impossible when you try to carry it all at once. But step by step, even heavy things move. Weeks passed. Then one morning he noticed he no longer felt the same panic when waking up. Life was still imperfect. He still had worries. He still felt uncertainty about the future. But he was no longer fully trapped in passive living. He was participating again. That mattered more than excitement. Many people confuse a meaningful life with a constantly exciting life. But meaning is often quieter than excitement. Meaning lives in care. In attention. In truth. In chosen repetition. In steady growth that is almost invisible day by day. One Sunday he visited an old bookstore. There he found a small used book of essays. Inside, someone had written a sentence in pencil. A good life is built where you are, with what you do today. He read the sentence 3 times. Then he closed the book and stood very still. This was exactly what he had been learning. Not through theory. Through practice. Through mornings. Through evenings. Through cards. Through returning. He bought the book and carried it home. That night he did not play solitaire immediately. First he sat and looked at the deck in his hands. 52 cards. Some hidden. Some visible. Some useful now. Some not yet. A lot like life. You do not control the whole order. You do not see every answer from the beginning. You do not know exactly when the right opening will appear. But you still must work with what is in front of you. And if you do that with patience, the hidden parts begin to reveal themselves. Not all at once, but enough for the next move. That is often how change works. You do not need the whole map. You need enough honesty for the next step. He wrote in his notebook. A small step is not small when it changes direction. Part 5. What really matters. As Daniel became more present, another question began to rise. If I stop wasting time, what should I give it to? This question was harder than he expected. It is one thing to escape distraction. It is another thing to choose true priorities. Noise is easy. Meaning requires courage. For many years Daniel had been busy. But busy is not the same as faithful. Busy is not the same as alive. Busy is not the same as honest. A person can fill every hour and still avoid what matters most. So he began to ask himself deeper questions. What gives me life instead of taking it? What leaves me clearer instead of emptier? What do I respect when I see it in others? What kind of man do I want to become? Not what do I want to own. Not what do I want others to think. But who do I want to be when nobody is watching? He made a short list. He wanted to become attentive, calm, reliable, curious, honest, brave enough to begin, patient enough to continue. He wanted deeper relationships, better language skills, creative work, a healthier mind, a more awake life. Then he made another list. What steals these things? Constant distraction, people-pleasing, digital noise, fear of being imperfect, waiting for mood, escaping discomfort, saying yes when he meant no, living without reflection. The two lists were like a light turned on in a dark room. Suddenly the conflict became visible. His life was not only being shaped by what he loved. It was also being shaped by what he allowed. This is true for everyone. A priority is not proved by words. It is proved by protection. If something matters, you must defend time for it. You must say no to something else. That is the painful part. Every meaningful yes costs another yes. There is no life without sacrifice. Even wasting time is a sacrifice. You sacrifice potential, peace, depth, growth. One evening Nina called him. She sounded upset. She said she felt lost. Not because life was terrible, but because it felt thin. He understood. He told her something simple. I think many people are not destroyed by one big mistake. They are slowly emptied by giving too much attention to what does not deserve it. She became quiet. Then she asked, "So what do we do?" Daniel looked at the cards on the table. Then he answered, "Maybe first we stop treating everything as equally important." It isn't. That became another lesson. Not everything deserves the same amount of your mind. Not every message is urgent. Not every opinion matters. Not every invitation helps you. Not every impulse should be followed. Not every form of entertainment is harmless. A mature life requires selection. Selection is love with boundaries. When Daniel played solitaire now, he saw the same truth there. You cannot move every card at the same time. You must choose. This move first. That move later. This stack matters now. That card must wait. Good play requires order. So does a good life. He started protecting his mornings more carefully. No useless content before work. No random noise while drinking coffee. No immediate surrender to the world's demands. He wanted to begin the day as a person, not as a reaction. This small protection changed his inner weather. He also became more thoughtful about evenings. Not every evening had to be productive. But every evening should be conscious. Rest with purpose. Entertainment with limits. Silence when needed. Learning when possible. And sometimes simply a quiet game of solitaire to return to himself. One night, while cleaning the deck, he remembered his grandfather again. The old man had never hurried his attention. When he worked, he worked. When he rested, he rested. When he listened, he listened. When he played cards, he played cards. There was dignity in that. A whole way of living. Daniel suddenly understood that focus is not only a tool for success. It is also a moral choice. To focus is to say, "This matters." To focus is to honor reality. To focus is to refuse a scattered life. He wrote in the notebook. A meaningful life is not built by doing more things. It is built by giving more truth to the right things. Part 6. Wake up before it is too late. Spring arrived slowly. The light changed. The mornings grew softer. Trees began to move again. Daniel walked more often now. Without headphones. Without constant stimulation. He had learned that silence was not empty. Silence was where hidden thoughts finally had space to speak. On one of these walks, he passed an old cemetery near a church. He was not a dramatic person, but he stopped at the gate. Names. Dates. Years. Short lines on stone. Beloved father. Faithful friend. Forever remembered. He stood there longer than expected. Each stone was a whole life reduced to a few words. All the mornings. All the plans. All the fears. All the worries that once felt urgent. All gone into silence. He did not feel hopeless. He felt awake. Death, when faced honestly, can be a teacher. Not because it tells us to panic, but because it tells us to stop pretending we have endless time. The modern world helps people forget this. It offers endless distraction, endless consumption, endless noise. It teaches the soul to stay occupied so it never has to ask difficult questions. But difficult questions are often the doorway to a true life. Am I becoming who I want to be? Am I using my attention with respect? If I continue like this, where will this road lead? What am I postponing that should no longer wait? Who do I need to forgive? What work is mine to begin? What must I stop feeding? These are not comfortable questions. But comfort is not the highest value. Comfort can protect healing. But it can also protect mediocrity. Daniel knew now that his greatest danger had never been catastrophe. It had been sleep. A soft inner sleep. A life half-lived because it was easier not to choose. Back at home, he sat at the table and dealt the cards again. He did not always need answers anymore. Sometimes he only needed the ritual. Shuffle. Deal. Observe. Move. Wait. Adapt. Continue. The game had become a symbol. Not of escape, but of return. A return to presence. A return to thought. A return to the discipline of the next honest move. That evening he imagined speaking to his younger self. The boy who thought life would become meaningful automatically. The boy who thought time was endless. The boy who believed that older people understood everything. He wanted to tell him something important. No one comes to save your attention. No one will build your inner life for you. No one can choose your days except you. Yes, the world is noisy. Yes, life is hard. Yes, energy is limited. Yes, pain is real. But even now, even here, you still have the power to direct the next hour. And then the next. And then the next. A life changes when enough hours are reclaimed. Not all at once, but steadily. One protected morning. One brave beginning. One screen turned off. One book opened. One skill practiced. One sincere prayer. One walk. One game of cards played with full attention. One day lived on purpose. Then another. And another. He did not become a perfect man. He still lost time sometimes. He still had weak evenings. He still delayed. Still escaped. Still felt fear. But he no longer worshipped those moments. He no longer called them normal and left them unchallenged. He could see them now. And seeing is the beginning of freedom. At the end of the night, he looked at the final card in his hand. Then he placed it down slowly. He whispered, almost to himself, "I am still here." That sentence mattered. Because as long as a person is still here, still conscious, still willing to return, life is not over. It can still be chosen. It can still be shaped. It can still be respected. There is a late hour that belongs to everyone. A moment when you realize time is passing more quickly than you thought. When that moment comes, do not only feel fear. Feel responsibility. Let the fear wake you. Then act. Not wildly. Not perfectly. But honestly. Because the tragedy is not that life is short. The tragedy is that many people remain asleep for most of it. Conclusion. In the beginning, Daniel believed he had a motivation problem. Later he understood that the problem was deeper. He had an attention problem. A presence problem. A truth problem. He was alive, but often absent. Busy, but not directed. Tired, but not restored. Full of plans, but poor in action. What changed him was not one great event. It was the painful honesty of looking at his own days. It was the decision to stop calling distraction a lifestyle. It was the courage to choose small acts over beautiful fantasies. It was the patience to return after failure. And yes, in a quiet and unexpected way, a simple game of solitaire helped him see all this. Because solitaire taught him to slow down. To observe. To stop forcing what was not ready. To work with what was real. To respect sequence. To wait without quitting. To make the next honest move. These are not only lessons for a card table. These are lessons for a life. If you feel lost, start smaller. If you feel tired, become more honest. If you feel distracted, protect 1 hour. If you feel ashamed of wasted time, do not stay there. Return. If you do not know how to change everything, do not ask for everything. Ask for the next true step. One step can begin a road. One protected hour can begin a new relationship with life. One repeated choice can become character. And one quiet evening can become the moment you finally wake up. Do not wait for a perfect future version of yourself. That person is built by what you do now. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Now. Your life is not only made of big milestones. It is mostly made of ordinary days. That is why ordinary attention is sacred. How you spend a morning matters. How you end an evening matters. What you do when nobody watches matters. What you repeat matters. What you protect matters. And what you keep postponing also matters. If there is one message inside this whole story, it is this. Do not abandon your life in small pieces. Do not trade your deepest values for endless distraction. Do not keep placing meaning into tomorrow. Do not wait so long that your habits begin to live for you. Wake up gently. Wake up honestly. Wake up now. Life lessons. 1. Time is more valuable than money. Money can return. Time cannot. Protect your hours with more respect. 2. Tomorrow is often a hiding place. Planning is good, but living must happen today. 3. Small steps change direction. A tiny action, repeated honestly, can reshape a whole life. 4. Consistency means return, not perfection. You will fail sometimes. The important thing is to come back. 5. Not everything deserves your attention. A meaningful life requires clear priorities and strong boundaries. 6. Focus is not only useful. It is also a way of honoring what matters. 7. A good life is built in ordinary days. Do not wait for dramatic moments. Use the life that is already in front of you. Ending. Thank you for listening. If this story spoke to you, take one quiet minute after this video. Do not rush away. Do not open another screen immediately. Just sit for a moment. And ask yourself one question. What is my next honest move? Maybe it is small. That is okay. Small is enough. Small is where real life begins. And if you are learning English, remember this too. You do not need to master everything today. One video. One page. One phrase. One step. That is how progress is built. Slowly. Quietly. Honestly. One move at a time.